I never thought I'd see her in this way, her eyes darting, lips tense, every muscle in her body bracing for something that wasn't a workout at all. I had gone to surprise her, to meet her after her late-night gym session, only to find myself standing in the doorway of the dimly lit fitness center, completely frozen. I thought I knew my girlfriend, or at least, I thought I knew her routines. But what I saw that night shattered everything I thought I understood about her. Her usual focus during our workouts was always admirable. But tonight? Tonight, it was different. The gym was nearly empty, save for a few dedicated souls pounding away at treadmills or lifting weights. The hum of the machines, the soft clink of dumbbells, this was supposed to be her safe space, her sanctuary after a long day at work. She'd been going more often lately, late into the night, claiming it was for self-care. At first, I didn't mind. In fact, I encouraged her. She had a demanding job and I knew how important it was for her to carve out time for herself. But something had shifted in the past few weeks. The later the workouts got, the more I felt like I was losing her, though I couldn't explain why. Tonight, I had planned to surprise her. I was going to show up with dinner in hand, some homemade pasta, maybe a bottle of wine, nothing extravagant, just something to show her I appreciated the effort she'd been putting into herself and her health. It seemed like a nice gesture. I wanted to feel connected again, to share something, even if we couldn't seem to find much time for one another lately. So, I pulled into the gym's parking lot, ready to surprise her at the door. I imagined her face lighting up when she saw me. She would laugh, maybe even roll her eyes, but I could already picture her gratitude, her warmth. I hadn't planned for what came next. I walked through the entrance and was met with the usual scent of rubber mats and sweat. But something felt off. The space seemed quieter than usual, and I didn't see her immediately. I checked the clock, she was still supposed to be here. I found a place by the front desk and waited, leaning against the counter, looking at my phone to kill time. That's when I heard it, the sound of fast, shallow breathing. I turned my head toward the noise, instinctively moving toward the back of the gym where the lights were dimmer. And there she was. I expected to see her on one of the machines, doing her usual circuit, maybe lifting some weights or running on the treadmill. Instead, I saw her in the far corner of the gym, not working out at all. She was talking to a man. They were standing close to each other, faces inches apart. He was much taller than her, and his hands were on her hips, his body angled in a way that made the intimacy of the moment feel different. She didn't seem to notice my presence. The way she was looking at him, her eyes soft, her lips slightly parted, made my stomach drop. This wasn't a casual chat between workout partners. It was something more. Something more than I ever expected. Something I never thought I'd witness. I wanted to turn and leave. But my feet were cemented to the floor. The scene unfolded in front of me in a blur. Her laugh rang out, light and unburdened, and then, just as quickly, she reached up and touched his arm, a touch that lingered. He leaned down, speaking into her ear, so close now that I could almost hear their exchange, though I stayed frozen in place. I felt my heart beat erratically, a mix of disbelief and something darker that I couldn't name. I had seen this behavior in movies, in books, but never, in my own life. Not from her. Not from the woman I thought I knew. Was this a workout? A late-night gym session to relieve stress, as she put it? Or had there been something more, something I wasn't seeing before? I don't know how long I stood there watching them, time stretching endlessly as I wrestled with what to do next. Should I confront her? Should I just walk away and pretend I hadn't seen anything? I had no idea what the right thing to do was. I had never been here before. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my trance. I pulled it out, startled. It was a text from her. Almost done, be home soon. Save me some pasta? XO. I stared at the message for a moment. How could she send that text, so casual, so innocent, when I was standing in the same room as the man she was obviously sharing some kind of chemistry with? I wanted to throw my phone, wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I slowly backed away, retreating to the door. I wasn't sure if they noticed, and I didn't care to find out. My head was spinning, every step I took away from them heavier than the last. The door opened and closed behind me, but I didn't register the sound. My heart was pounding too loudly in my ears. I stood outside, staring at the gym through the glass doors, struggling to catch my breath. I had no idea where I was supposed to go from here. I didn't know what the right answer was anymore. All I could think of was her voice, her laugh, the way she had been looking at him. The way she hadn't even noticed me standing there, invisible to her in a moment that should have been ours. The parking lot was empty now, the streets quiet and still. I hadn't even realized how late it had gotten. My body was numb, my mind racing, my world turned upside down. I thought I had understood everything about our relationship, but this was a side of her I never saw coming. I turned toward my car but didn't get in. I didn't know where I was going anymore. She had always said she wanted space, that she needed time for herself. But this was something different. Was it just a workout, or had I been blind to something bigger than I cared to see? I needed answers. And I knew, deep down, that I wouldn't find them until I was ready to face the truth. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity. The streets outside were empty, the soft glow of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The image of her, laughing and touching him, kept replaying over and over in my mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as if the car was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. The text she sent earlier pinged in my mind again. Almost done, be home soon. Save me some pasta? XO. The words felt like a betrayal now. How could she act so normal when there was something so wrong happening? I felt like I was drowning in confusion, suffocating under the weight of the situation, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I needed time to think, to process. I looked at my phone again, her smiling face staring back at me in our last selfie together. She looked happy, genuinely happy. Her eyes sparkled like they always did when she was with me. It didn't make sense. How could she be hiding something like this, something so obvious, something I could feel, even if I wasn't fully aware of it until now? I opened the message thread between us, scrolled through our conversations, and tried to piece together the events of the last few weeks. She had been acting differently, more distracted, more distant. But I had told myself it was nothing. She was just busy, tired from work, overwhelmed. She had warned me about this before, how sometimes she needed her own space. I had always respected it, maybe too much. I had allowed myself to believe in the excuses. The late nights at the gym. The sudden interest in self-care. But I should have known. I should have noticed that she wasn't herself. The way she acted tonight was a clear sign I had missed, maybe even ignored, for too long. Was she ashamed? Did she not feel like she could talk to me anymore? Was that why she hadn't said anything? I couldn't lie to myself any longer. I knew what I had seen. I knew I couldn't just go home and pretend everything was fine. Not after witnessing what I had. But I also knew I wasn't ready to face her yet. If I confronted her now, I might say something I'd regret, something that couldn't be taken back. The anger inside me was building. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been this angry. And it wasn't even because of the man she was with, it was because of the secrecy, the betrayal of trust. How long had this been going on? Had I been the last to know? I grabbed my phone again, tapping her name, thinking I might call her, yell at her, demand an explanation. But my thumb hovered over the call button. My chest tightened, and the words died before they could form. I couldn't just accuse her without knowing the full story, without understanding why she had hidden this from me. But what was the truth? I couldn't ignore it any longer. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was normal when it wasn't. I slammed the phone down onto the passenger seat, the screen lighting up with her name. I needed clarity. I needed the truth, even if it broke me. I couldn't live like this anymore, hanging on to someone who might not even want me anymore. I looked back at the gym, but it was too dark to see anything. There was no sign of her, no movement, nothing. I wondered if she had already left with him, or if she was still inside, pretending to be the same woman I'd been in love with for years. Was this just a momentary lapse in judgment for her, or had there been something more? I slammed the car door shut, throwing the keys in the ignition, my fingers trembling. My mind was racing, my thoughts fragmented. I was filled with questions that needed answers, and I wasn't going to leave until I got them. The drive home was silent, my mind replaying everything over and over. What had she been doing all these late nights? What had she been hiding? The questions twisted inside my gut like a sickening knot. It was hard to breathe with every thought that ran through my head. By the time I arrived at the apartment, the door felt heavier than it ever had before. I had lived here with her for years, but tonight, the place felt cold, distant, foreign, even. The apartment was quiet, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the stillness. I had never felt more alone in this space, even though I wasn't the one who had been missing. I walked inside, hoping for some sign, some clue that everything was okay, that it was just a misunderstanding. But there was nothing. The apartment was exactly how I left it, neat, orderly, just like she liked it. But something was off. I could feel it, the weight of silence in the air. The absence of her energy. I walked toward the kitchen, looking for any evidence of her usual routine. There was nothing out of place, her half-empty coffee cup on the counter, the stack of unopened bills, the gym bag in the corner, waiting for her to grab it for her next session. I wasn't sure why I was looking for these things, as if they could somehow give me answers that I wasn't ready to hear. My phone buzzed again, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was another message from her. Sorry I didn't call. Running a little late. I'll be back soon. XO. The words were casual, too casual. The same as always. But now, they felt like a lie. How could she pretend everything was fine when I knew it wasn't? I let out a long, slow breath, staring at the phone in my hand. The anger had subsided, replaced by a growing sense of exhaustion, of sadness. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. Did I want the truth? Or did I want to go back to the way things were before tonight? But deep down, I knew the answer. I had to face her. I had to face whatever was coming. I wasn't ready for it, but I couldn't keep running from it. I picked up the phone again, hesitated, and then pressed the button to call her. This time, I wasn't going to wait for her to text me back. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know what I was up against. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the seconds stretching between each breath as I stared at the screen, watching the dial tone echo in my ears. I didn't know what I expected, maybe that she'd answer and everything would fall into place, some simple explanation that would make this all go away. Maybe she'd tell me I was overthinking it, that it was all just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. The phone rang for what seemed like an eternity, and just as I was about to hang up, the call was answered. Her voice came through, soft and cheerful. Hey, babe. What's up? Everything okay? I almost didn't recognize it. The casual, chipper tone, it felt so disconnected from the knot twisting in my gut. She sounded so normal. So untouched by whatever storm I was currently drowning in. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mouth felt dry, my mind racing, trying to find the words. Yeah, everything's fine, I lied, the words sticking in my throat. I was standing in the middle of our living room now, staring at nothing in particular. I wanted to sit down, but I was frozen in place, my body tense, coiled like a spring ready to snap. What's wrong? She asked, her voice laced with concern now. You sound weird. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself, to keep the anxiety from creeping into my voice. I wanted to talk, I said, forcing the words out. Got something to ask you. There was a pause on the other end. A long, uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch infinitely. Of course. What is it? Why are you really going to the gym late at night? The question came out of nowhere, sharp and direct, before I could stop myself. Her response was immediate, but it was a little too fast. A little too practiced. You know how it is. Just trying to stay in shape, keep my stress levels down. I've told you that before, haven't I? I let out a breath, the frustration starting to claw at me. I know. But it's not just that, is it? Because lately, you've been acting different, you've been more distant, more secretive, and I found something tonight, something that doesn't add up. I could hear the hesitation in her breath. She was stalling. What do you mean? I mean I saw the receipt. The Uber ride. I could feel the words tumbling out, each one like a slap to the face. I saw that you've been going to this hotel, and I don't know why. I don't know who you're meeting there, but it's not just late-night gym sessions anymore. What's going on, Emily? The silence on the other end of the line was suffocating. My pulse was racing, but I felt as if the world had stopped moving altogether. Every beat of my heart was a painful reminder that I didn't want to hear what she might say next, but I knew I couldn't escape it. Her voice wavered slightly before she collected herself. It's not what you think, okay? It's just complicated. You're going to hate me for this, but it's not as bad as it sounds. Then explain it to me, I said, my voice low, barely above a whisper. Because right now, all I can think about is how you've been hiding things from me. Hiding you from me. And I don't know why, but it hurts. It hurts more than I can put into words. I could hear her exhale sharply, like she was preparing herself for something. I never meant for you to find out like this. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to hurt you. A cold chill ran through me, and I couldn't stop myself from asking the question I didn't want to know the answer to. Are you seeing someone else? There was another long pause, this one heavy and thick, and I swore I could hear her heartbeat on the other end of the line. No, she said finally, but the hesitation in her voice spoke volumes. I'm not seeing anyone else. But I'm not exactly being honest with you about why I've been so distant. The way she said that made my stomach churn. Her words felt like a wall that was slowly collapsing, revealing the truth in jagged pieces. I could feel the trust that had taken years to build, disintegrating before my eyes. I'm listening, I said, my voice barely audible now, afraid of what she might say next. I've been going to that hotel for therapy, she said in a rush. I didn't want you to know, because I was ashamed. I was struggling, and I didn't know how to tell you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, I couldn't process them. Therapy? What are you talking about? She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. I've been dealing with some things, okay? Things that I couldn't talk to you about because I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want you to think that I couldn't handle things on my own. But I've been seeing someone who's been helping me work through everything. I let out a shaky breath, feeling the weight of her confession settle over me. Why didn't you just tell me? I could have helped. We could have worked through it together. I know, she said softly. But I didn't think you'd understand. I didn't think you'd be able to look at me the same way after I told you. You don't trust me? The hurt in my voice was palpable, and I hated how vulnerable I sounded. I had always thought we were a team, always thought that no matter what came our way, we could face it together. After everything, you thought I wouldn't understand. I was scared, she admitted quietly. Scared that you'd think less of me. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I couldn't. And I didn't want you to know, because I didn't want you to pity me. I didn't want you to think I was weak. I could hear the guilt in her voice, the regret, and it made the anger inside me simmer. I wasn't angry that she had been seeking help, I was angry that she had shut me out. That she had allowed herself to feel so alone in this, when she didn't have to be. That she hadn't trusted me enough to share it with me from the beginning. You don't get it, Emily, I said, the words coming out more harshly than I intended. I don't care if you're struggling, I don't care about your weaknesses or your flaws. I care about you. I care about us. But you shut me out, and that's what hurts the most. There was silence on the other end again, and this time, it felt like 1,000 miles of space between us. She didn't know what to say, and I didn't know how to make her understand how deeply this cut. I'm sorry, she whispered finally, the sincerity in her voice unmistakable. I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted you. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know if sorry would fix this, if there was anything she could say to make it right again. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't sure where we'd go from here, or if things could ever go back to the way they were, but this was a start. The truth was finally out. And now we had to figure out what to do with it. The conversation had left a heavy silence hanging in the air, thick with unspoken words. I sat on the couch, my mind whirling, processing everything she had just told me. Therapy. Shame. Fear. Trust. All these emotions came crashing into me, one after another, until I felt numb. It was as though a dam had broken open in her heart, and now, I was standing in the floodwaters, unsure whether I should wade through them or walk away. I could hear her voice in my ear again, the words that she had said so quickly, almost too quickly to be real. I didn't want you to think less of me, she had confessed. I didn't want you to pity me. The truth was, I didn't think less of her. Not for her struggles. I was proud of her for seeking help. But the way she had hidden it, kept it from me for so long, felt like a betrayal. It wasn't the therapy that hurt, it was the secrecy. The isolation. The feeling that the woman I loved had built an emotional wall between us, one I couldn't see, couldn't even feel, until tonight. I let out a long, slow breath, trying to clear the fog in my mind. The hurt, the confusion, it was still there, swirling like a storm I couldn't control. I stared at the phone in my hand, waiting for her to speak, waiting for some sign that she was still the woman I had fallen in love with. But all I felt was the overwhelming sense of loss. I didn't know if it was the loss of the woman I thought she was or the loss of the trust we had once shared. I finally broke the silence, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. Why didn't you just tell me, Emily? Why wait until now? There was a long pause before she answered, her voice thick with emotion. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to tell you that I've been struggling, that I couldn't handle it on my own. I thought I could, but I couldn't. And I didn't want you to look at me differently. I didn't want you to think I wasn't strong enough. Strong enough. I repeated bitterly. You don't have to be strong all the time, Emily. We're in this together, remember? That's the whole point of a relationship, being able to lean on each other when things get hard. You don't have to do everything alone. I know, she whispered, sounding more vulnerable than I had ever heard her before. I know. And I'm sorry. I felt a surge of frustration bubble up inside me, and I couldn't help the words that spilled out. Sorry isn't enough. I can't just forget that you've been lying to me, hiding things from me. I've been sitting here, thinking everything was fine, while you've been carrying this burden by yourself. And I didn't even know. How was I supposed to be there for you if you didn't let me in? Her voice broke, and I could hear the raw emotion behind it. I didn't want to burden you with it. I thought it would pass, that I'd get better on my own. But it didn't. And I didn't know what else to do. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the weight of the situation press down on me. I knew she wasn't asking for my pity, she wasn't that kind of person. But the distance between us had grown so wide, so quickly, and I wasn't sure how to bridge it. How could I reconcile the woman I had known, the woman I had trusted, with this stranger who had been hiding pieces of herself from me? The silence stretched between us once more, and this time, it felt suffocating, like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to say something, anything, that would make this all feel okay again. But I didn't know where to start. Could we even go back to the way we were? Could we rebuild what had been broken? I don't know if I can trust you again, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I could hear the sharp intake of her breath on the other end of the line. I understand, she said, the sadness in her voice making my chest ache. I know I've hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I swear, I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to need someone, and I thought I could fix everything on my own. I thought if I didn't tell you, it would go away. But it didn't. It just got worse. I sat in the silence, my mind running in circles, torn between the desire to forgive her and the reality of what had happened. Could I move past the deception? Could I still trust her with my heart after everything? The pain in her voice was real, and for a moment, I felt the urge to reach out, to tell her that everything would be okay, that we could get through this. But then the other part of me, the part that felt betrayed, whispered that I was just fooling myself. You should have told me sooner, I said again, this time with a little more force. Maybe we could have figured this out together. But now, I don't know if I can just forget about it. It's not just the therapy, Emily. It's the fact that you kept this from me. That you were so far away from me, and I had no idea. I didn't want to push you away, she said, almost pleading. I didn't want to make things worse. I thought if I could just handle it myself, I wouldn't have to bother you. But I can't handle it alone anymore. There it was, the truth. She was scared. Scared of how I would see her. Scared of being vulnerable. And I couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Maybe I had never really given her the space to be weak, to show her cracks. Maybe I had expected her to be strong when I should have known that sometimes, strength looks like asking for help. But it still hurt. It still felt like she had kept me in the dark, like I had been an afterthought in her battle with herself. I wasn't sure how to reconcile that with the love I still had for her. I don't know what we do now, I said quietly, the weight of the words making my chest tighten. I want to believe you, Emily. But I don't know how to just forget about what you've kept from me. I understand, she replied softly. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm ready to work through this. I'm not going anywhere. Please, don't walk away from me. Don't walk away from us. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in, letting the reality of the situation settle in my chest. I had a choice to make. I could walk away, leave everything behind and never look back. Or I could choose to stay, to try to rebuild what had been broken, knowing it would take time. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to make that decision yet. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was actually thinking about it. The choice wasn't clear, but at least I was ready to confront it. Ready to see if there was a way forward. Give me time, I said, my voice low but steady. I need time to figure this out. I'll give you all the time you need, she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. I just need you to know that I'm here. And I'm so sorry. For everything. And for the first time that night, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late to save this. Maybe we could rebuild. But I knew one thing for sure, the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But we had a chance, and that was more than I had expected. It had been days since that conversation, days of uncertainty, of walking around the edges of something fragile. The weight of the words we had exchanged, the pain and the hurt, still lingered in the air, but I felt the tiniest shift. It wasn't much, But it was there. A sliver of something that told me we could still come back from this. I kept replaying our conversation over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of everything. The truth had come out, but it was still hard to swallow. She had hidden it all, her therapy, her struggles, the fear that kept her from reaching out to me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much I had missed. How much she had been going through, alone, while I had been blissfully unaware. The guilt gnawed at me. Was I too distant? Too caught up in my own world to notice that she was falling apart? I had always prided myself on being observant, on knowing her better than anyone else. But I had failed her. I had missed the signs, ignored the little cracks that were growing wider. And now, it felt like everything I thought I knew about us had been called into question. I thought back to the early days, how everything had felt so easy. Our connection had been instant, undeniable. We had shared everything. Laughter, secrets, dreams for the future. I hadn't known what real trust was until I met her. We had been a team. And now, somehow, that felt like a lifetime ago. I wasn't sure how to bridge the gap. How do you rebuild something that had been shattered, even if it wasn't completely broken? The cracks were there, but the foundation was still solid. Or at least, I hoped it was. I needed to see her. To talk to her, face to face. The phone calls, the texts, the endless hours of just talking, they weren't enough anymore. We needed to do this in person. I wanted to see her eyes, feel the weight of her words without the distance of a screen or a receiver between us. When I finally saw her again, we were standing in the same place we had been that night. The silence hung between us, awkward, yet not as suffocating as it had been. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me, waiting. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the same eyes that had once held so much confidence, so much strength. Now, there was a kind of sadness there, mixed with an undercurrent of hope. She was waiting for me to make the next move, but I wasn't sure what that next move should be. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice trembling just a little. "I know you're hurting, and I don't expect everything to be okay right now. But I want to try. I want to fix this. I want us to heal." It felt like a breath I had been holding for far too long. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't sure how to move forward, that I was scared. But I didn't. Instead, I took a step toward her. Slowly, cautiously, like I was testing the waters. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said quietly. "But I'm not ready to walk away either." Her face softened, and she nodded, her lips parting as though she were about to say something else. But I stopped her before she could. "I don't want things to be perfect," I continued, my voice steady now. "I just want honesty. I want you to be able to talk to me, to not feel like you have to carry everything on your own. I can't fix everything, Emily. I don't have all the answers. But I want to be there for you. I just need you to let me." She reached out then, her hand tentative, as if she were afraid I might pull away. But I didn't. I let her take my hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, the familiarity of it. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. "I promise," she whispered. "I'll be better. I'll let you in. I won't hide things from you anymore. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. You are enough. I've just been scared." I squeezed her hand, trying to convey everything I couldn't say in words. I wasn't sure if I could forget the lies, if I could ever go back to the way things had been. But I was willing to try. I had to be. We stood there for a long time, neither of us knowing exactly what to say next. But the silence felt different this time. Less like a wall between us and more like a space we needed to fill together. "I don't want to rush this," I said after a while. "I don't want to force anything. But I think we can rebuild. I think we can find our way back. It's just going to take time. And trust. Lots of trust." "Time," she repeated, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I can do that. I'll wait as long as it takes. If you'll have me." I nodded, my heart lighter than it had been in days. "I'll have you. But we're going to take this one step at a time. No more pretending. No more hiding. We're in this together, okay?" "Okay," she said, her voice strong now, like she believed it. Like she knew that this was just the beginning of something new. As we stood there, holding hands, I realized something. It wasn't the perfect ending I had imagined, but it was real. And maybe that was enough. Maybe, just maybe, the pieces we had broken apart could come back together, stronger than before.